This video is brought to you by BetterHelp. The Coplay Cement Kilns are 9 massive structures designed as an open-air historic site. Entering service in 1893, the kilns were used in the production of Portland cement, the most common type of cement in the world. After being shut down in 1904, they were donated to Lehigh County in 1975 for the creation of a historic site. And although they are no longer in use, they remain a celebration of the industry of the country and the nation as a whole. Without the company that built these kilns, there is no American industrial juggernaut. Without the Coplay Cement Company, the new world of America may have never overshadowed the old. And yet, next to no one knows about them. So today, we will uncover their hidden story and how they helped build America. I'm your host, Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History. Before we talk about the cement kilns, we need to start with the basics. So let's discuss what cement actually is. Cement is a binder, a sort of glue that holds materials together in construction. It's one of the world's most consumed resources, just behind water. If you want to build something, you need cement. It's not a recent invention either. For example, the earliest known development of natural cement occurred 12 million years ago, and some of the earliest productions of its components started 500 million years ago. At least, that's when Jacksonburg limestone began forming across what we now call Pennsylvania. Natural cement is created by removing carbonic acid from limestone that contains clay. To do this, the limestone needs to be heated at temperatures ranging from 800 to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. This can occur in nature, but it's rare. Roman engineers found natural cement around Mount Vesuvius, whose eruption presumably fired the limestone at the right temperature to make cement. Natural cement is a soft yellow stone that must be ground into powder before use. However, this is not the kind of cement that is most common. Hydraulic cement takes center stage, and it has a more intricate development. So we're going to go through the creation of Portland cement, the most common kind of hydraulic cement. First, the materials, namely limestone in our case, are collected and crushed. It's then combined with various other ingredients, known as clinker minerals, and then burned in a cement kiln. The kiln takes the mixture up to 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit, which turns some elements to gas, and the remainder of the clinker comes out as small gray pebbles. The finely ground cement powder is the result, and the clinker can later be re-added to make new kinds of cement. This is a much more efficient process than normal cement, as the clinker can be reused multiple times and can be stored for several months. However, it's worth pointing out that the carbon dioxide emissions from the cement firing contribute about 10% to the world's total CO2 emissions, and estimates say that that number will more than double by 2050 to meet the growing world population. However, there is room for improvement in the process, so solutions are in the works. Now that we've gone over the process of creating cement, we can get into the people who made it and ultimately built the America that we know. But first, I'd like to tell you about a very helpful service that I recently discovered. You see, over the past few years, quite a few people who I hold dearly sought help for their mental health. Seeing firsthand how much professional help can make a difference made me feel passionate about wellness, which is why I'm grateful to the sponsor of this episode, BetterHelp. Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless of whether you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you just are a normal human being living in this world and going through a hard time, therapy can give you the tools to approach your life in a very different way. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible, and this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be really hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easy because it's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in my description. It's betterhelp.com/itshistory. Clicking that link helps support this channel, but it also gets you 10% off of your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. And because finding a therapist is a little like dating, if you don't really fit with that therapist, which is a common thing in therapy, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost without stressing about insurance or who's in your network or anything like that. Again, I've seen firsthand how much having someone to talk to can help. So if you're struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/itshistory. Thank you again, BetterHelp, for supporting the channel. The United States was always a huge cornerstone of cement. One of its first big projects was the Erie Canal, which we've covered previously. One of the assistants to the canal's chief engineers was a man named Canvas White, who went to the United Kingdom shortly after getting his position. There, he studied the various projects of the then most industrialized nation on the planet and their use of hydraulic cement. This was of key interest to him, since the United States still depended on natural cement, which was of a lower quality than the new kind. Plus, natural cement couldn't be used for a canal. It would wear down and collapse from water damage, so hydraulic cement was the perfect fit. Returning to the New World with this knowledge, he began looking for ways to apply what he had learned. Europe held the only stocks of hydraulic cement, and New York State wasn't buying, so he had a method but no materials. As he looked for ways to apply the techniques, Mr. White found a partner. This man, Andrew Barteau, knew of local limestone deposits that could be used to create hydraulic cement. The two men made an agreement, and White secured a patent on this new production method under Barteau's name. This new production method proved extremely successful, as 4.65 million gallons of White's cement was used in constructing the Erie Canal, and this was just his first project. One of his later projects had him consulting the reconstruction of the Lehigh Canal in northeastern Pennsylvania. From 1827 to 1829, this project required a large amount of cement, not nearly as large as the Erie Canal, but large enough to warrant the construction of a plant. This cement plant, located in the Lehigh Gap, operated from 1826 to 1830, when a second plant began production at Siegfried's Bridge, Pennsylvania. It's worth noting that Siegfried's Bridge was renamed Cementon after 1901, which should show you how important this material is to the region. In 1853, construction on a railroad line between Easton and Allentown, Pennsylvania, came to the Lehigh Valley. This new Lehigh Valley Railroad's construction exposed large deposits of natural cement rock near Coplay, Pennsylvania, about a mile from Cementon. This was very important to David Oliver Saylor, an employer of the fire brick manufacturer in Allentown. Thanks to his job, he was very familiar with cement kilns, but he also knew that he was surrounded by other cement workers who would know cement rock when they saw it. So this was his chance, and he had to be careful not to let it slip away from him. He started off by taking some samples of the rock, stuffing them into his pocket not to draw attention to himself. He finished the day without anyone noticing the deposits or the samples he had taken. But once he got home, he turned his stove into a makeshift cement kiln, firing the material inside it. He took them out and placed the samples inside his coffee grinder. The result was a yellow powder, concrete, but not just any concrete. This was exceptional concrete, created from the Jacksonburg limestone that had formed 500 million years ago. It turned out that Saylor's deposit had a near-perfect blend of elements for natural cement, being high in lime and clay but low in magnesia and iron. It may not have been particularly shiny, but Saylor had just struck gold. Now, he probably didn't know the chemical makeup of the limestone, but Saylor was wise enough to know that they were some pretty remarkable rocks. He bought farmland north of Coplay just by the deposits. Joining him in this was Adam Wooliver, an Allentown politician and the county clerk, plus their friend Isaias. Together, the three founded the Coplay Cement Company in 1866 and began building a cement plant in the Lehigh Valley. They built 2 small limestone kilns for the plant, but an issue arose. They didn't have a way to powderize the concrete, and the coffee grinder would not suffice for their plans. So they took over an old distillery building near Coplay Station and modified it slightly, turning it into a makeshift grinder mill. From there, they went to the railroad cut, harvesting limestone from the deposit and hauling it a mile to their plant. Despite the makeshift nature of the operation, it was quite profitable, though we don't know exactly how much the business brought in. What we do know is that it was enough to expand the plant in 1869, adding a new stone mill that increased their production to 250 barrels of cement per day. What the plant may have lacked in size, it made up for in its incredible location. It had access to the Lehigh Valley Railroad since it was built directly nearby, but it also had water transportation. And that's to say nothing of the sheer magnitude of raw material it had undivided access to. Saylor, the company's president, was well aware of this and continued to expand, capitalizing on his fortune to great success. By 1870, the company opened another quarry west of the railroad cut, tapping into the massive limestone deposit in another area. 1871 saw another addition to Plant A, increasing productivity drastically, but the biggest change was yet to come. You see, during all of this, Saylor was still experimenting with cement and was about to make a major breakthrough. He had discovered a seemingly new kind of hydraulic cement, one which involved firing limestone alongside various other minerals to create cement through a much more efficient process. And on September the 26th, 1871, Saylor secured U.S. patent number 119413, Anchor Cement. However, after improvements, it eventually came to be known as Saylor's Portland Cement, which changed American industry forever. At the time, most of the cement used for American construction was imported from the United Kingdom. The cement used to create the Erie Canal, well, that was hydraulic but less resource efficient. Portland cement had been produced in America 5 years before, in Michigan, but their size and location could never have matched the demands of American industry and were reliant on the British designs that were half a world away. Saylor had the first American-grown design for Portland cement and had the resources to sell it for $3 a barrel. With this, America's industrial growth was fully independent. The United States no longer had to rely on the British for cement and was now free to surpass them in industry. In another 50 years, the United States produced 4 times as much cement as Great Britain, which as a result became the second largest producer. And with this, Saylor had enabled the United States to become an industrial juggernaut. And he wasn't done with the design either. He brought on a chemist named John W. Eckert to refine the method. By 1875, his production matched the grade of cement made in England, hence the name Saylor's Portland Cement. In 1876, the Philadelphia Centennial International Exhibition was held to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the United States. 10 million visitors from 37 nations came to see and compete for distinction, and Saylor's achievements were honored for their quality. And this came with a great deal of attention. Saylor cement was used in the fortification of Staten Island, in New York Harbor, the Arlington National Cemetery, amphitheaters, Philadelphia's Drexel Building, New York's Woolworth Building, the Lincoln Memorial, and the jetty works of the Mississippi at New Orleans exclusively used concrete from Saylor. Needless to say, business was booming. Given the astonishing rise of his company, Saylor needed to expand to match the nationwide demand. So he built an additional kiln in 1873, 2 more in 1874, 6 iron grinding mills, a crusher, and 4 more kilns in 1877. It still wasn't enough. 1882 saw the creation of 3 more kilns and 2 more mills, bringing the total of kilns up to 17. However, demand was only rising, and the kilns could not match it. And that's not surprising, since the dome of the kilns that the company had been using were the first model of cement kilns ever used in America. Every use of them required a fresh supply of fuel and alternating layers of coal. Clinker had to be extracted manually and hand-sorted for overburnt and underburnt material. They also needed to be rotated constantly while burning, and that was the least labor-intensive part of the job. Costs were massive, and this is to say nothing of the furnace itself, which let a massive amount of heat escape out the top. This required a new solution, perhaps a breakthrough. Saylor had a great deal of ingenuity to match, and more importantly, he knew a lot of people who could help him get there, but he would never see the day. Sadly, David Oliver Saylor died on July the 21st, 1884, but in his legacy, he came to be known as the father of the American cement industry. 8 years after his death, the Coplay Cement Company began construction of a second plant, this time utilizing new cement kiln technology. They elected to use a new kind of upright kiln which took more labor but used less fuel. This design was the Aalborg kiln, and these are the structures that defined the Coplay Cement Kilns. They were built from red brick on the outside and lined with fire brick on the interior. They had 4 floors consisting of 3 chambers for material. One for the initial heating, another for burning off excess, and a third for cooling afterward. Coal was introduced through holes on the 3rd floor, and metal rods were used to feed it into the 2nd floor firing chamber. Also, on that 2nd floor were 4 air intakes. The material went from the preheating chamber on the top of the kiln into a narrow central chamber for burning, and then dropped down to a wider bottom for cooling. And the heat from the cooling material assisted in warming incoming contents above. The bottom of the kiln also had grate bars of 6 feet above the lower floor, which collected burnt clinker to be loaded into wagons for storage on the 2nd floor. What made the Aalborg kilns special was the firing chamber. Where other kilns had most of the heat escape without being put to use, the firing chamber was located in a bottleneck in the kiln, meaning all rising heat would concentrate into the firing chamber. It directed the draft into one choke point, making that narrow point the single hottest spot in the kiln at all times, rather than the aimless heat of the previous designs. The firing chamber got so hot that even with the fire brick lining, the central chamber needed tension straps to keep it from collapsing due to heat expansion. While this needs a lot of manual stoking, it was extremely fuel efficient compared to the previous designs. However, attentive viewers may remember from the beginning of the video, these kilns were taken out of service in 1904, 11 years after they were built. You may be asking, if they were so good, why didn't they last? Well, that's because they weren't the only kinds of kilns around. Another kind of kiln was the rotary kiln, and it was developed around the same time as these. They were less fuel efficient than the Aalborg kilns, but needed much less labor. So as of 1904, the Coplay Cement Company constructed rotary kilns in a 3rd plant a few hundred feet west of the Aalborg kilns and took them out of commission. Most of the 2nd plant was demolished soon after, and the only remnants were the kilns. In the 1920s, the top chambers were cleared out for storage. Newspapers reported that the only reason they hadn't been torn down was that there was some technical problem when they attempted to. However, they would never get a chance to tear it down. In 1976, the 2nd plant's remnants were added to the National Register of Historic Places. The company donated the entire area to Lehigh County since they weren't going to get any more use out of them. The country decided to turn the area into a museum, celebrating the economic development of the region and the industrial breakthroughs that changed the nation and the world. Cement is needed in nearly all construction, so if you look at this from a historic perspective, if the United States was ever going to surpass its foreign competitors, it needed to produce at home. The Coplay Cement Company gave the nation the key to economic domination and goes largely unrecognized for its efforts. The only remnants that can be seen are these special cement kilns. Today it's known as the Saylor Park Industrial Museum, named for the father of American cement, the man who stuffed some limestone in his pocket and changed the world. We'll leave it there for today. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing. Until next time, I'm your host Ryan Socash, signing off.